This video is sponsored by Box, the online technology store. Visit box.co.uk for the best deals on TVs, soundbars, and all your other technology needs. Hello everyone, Vincent Teo from HDTV Test here, and this is the Sony ZH8 8K LED LCD television, also marketed as the Bravia Z8H in the USA. This is the 75-inch version, model number KD-75ZH8, but it's also available in a massive screen size of 85 inches. Key features include a native 8K resolution of 7680x4320 pixels, full array local dimming direct-lit LED backlighting, X1 Ultimate video processor, X-Motion Clarity black zonal insertion, X-Wide angle technology, HDR support for HDR10, HLG and Dolby Vision, upgraded acoustic multi-audio speaker system, as well as Android 9.0 Pie Smart TV platform. The chassis remains thicker than most TVs on the market, with a two-tier dual-frame design, presumably to accommodate the powerful backlight. The panel sits on a pair of low-profile feet that ideally should be placed slightly beyond both ends of the screen, but since my TV stand is not wide enough, I'm forced to take advantage of the additional narrow feet position that the ZH8 offers. The connections are found on the left rear of the display, including 4 HDMI inputs, of which HDMI 3 is the eARC port and HDMI 4 is the HDMI 2.1 port that can accept and display 8K video signal. Judging from how far the HDMI 4 input is from the other three, like a coughing person on a bus who is shunned by other passengers, it's likely that Sony needed to implement a separate companion chip to add 8K connectivity. Interestingly, on HDMI port 4, you have to choose between supporting Dolby Vision or supporting 8K. If you choose Dolby Vision, then you'll have to forego 8K, and vice versa, which isn't a big problem, since there's not much consumer 8K source over HDMI at the moment, let alone 8K Dolby Vision content. Using the excellent Meridio 7G signal generator to read the EDIT, we confirmed the bandwidth on HDMI 4 to be 40 gigabits per second, permitting 8K at 60Hz or 4K 120Hz at 10-bit 444 resolution. The remote control supplied with the ZH8 is Sony's highest-end backlit premium remote, which uses both motion and light sensors to automatically illuminate some buttons when you pick up the remote in a dark room. The Sony ZH8 features a MediaTek MT5893 SoC with 2.5 GB of RAM, so while navigation of the Android TV interface and the new graphics-intensive user menu was still impressively responsive, it's not as blazingly fast as the MT5895 SoC found on the Sony XH90 or X900H. Okay, let's talk about picture quality. The Sony ZH8 uses an 8K LCD panel from Samsung Display, which is VA type with viewing angle compensation film, allowing the TV to preserve off-axis colors and contrast better than conventional VA LCD panels. Although, as you can probably see from the camera, there might be rainbow reflections depending on the angle at which light hits the screen. With peak white aligned to 120 candelas per square meter and auto local dimming disabled, we measured the native black level of the ZH8 at 0.058 candelas per square meter on a 4x4 ANSI checkerboard pattern, dropping to 0.03 candelas per square meter once auto local dimming was set to medium. Using our own custom-authored test pattern containing a small white box crawling horizontally and then vertically against the borders of a black background, we counted 16 vertical columns and 20 horizontal rows, giving us a total of 320 independently dimmable zones. Sony's local dimming algorithm continues to favor accuracy over blooming or haloing suppression, so even though you'll see a bit more blooming around bright objects than Samsung QLEDs, sometimes even seeping into the top and bottom letterbox bars, both shadow detail and highlight luminance were preserved in a clearer and more accurate manner than the Samsungs, without exhibiting as much backlight fluctuations, for example in this scene from Gravity as Sandra Bullock is tumbling through space. Of course, when watched in a pitch black room, there's still going to be noticeable blooming in HDR content, not to mention minor afterglow when the scene cuts from bright to dark. Personally, I am willing to accept these trade-offs in light of the TV's other strengths, particularly with the help of some gentle bias lighting to mitigate these issues. But if you want absolutely no blooming or distracting luminance instability, then you should definitely go for an OLED TV which boasts pixel-level light control, but will obviously have other shortcomings. Color accuracy on our review sample was good, but not as outstanding as last year's ZG9 or Z9G Master Series. On this color checker SG chart where 140 patches were measured, average delta error came in at a very respectable 1.52 after calibration, but there were a few colors that exceeded the humanly perceptible inaccuracy threshold of delta error 3. In practice, most colors still looked natural and realistic in real-world material, with the minor inaccuracies only noticeable beside a reference screen in a side-by-side comparison. The Sony ZH8 or Z8H correctly reproduced slow panning shots in 24 frames per second movies without telesonic judder, even with motion flow switched off. For 60Hz content, baseline motion resolution was the sample and hold value of 300 lines natively, doubling to 600 lines once smoothness motion interpolation was engaged. On this particular test pattern, 1080 lines of motion resolution was only possible once we nudged clearness backlight scanning up to 1, thus activating the X motion clarity black zonal insertion technology. Sony's motion compensated frame interpolation or MCFI generally incurs less interpolation artifacts than other TV manufacturers in real-world viewing. But because it doesn't differentiate between low frame rate and high frame rate content, the motion flow settings that are required to achieve 1080 lines of motion resolution in 50Hz or 60Hz material would also introduce soap opera effect or SOE to 24Hz films, which means repeated manual tinkering for purists who want high motion clarity for watching sports, but no soap opera effect or SOE when watching movies. We doubt many people who can afford to buy 8K televisions will be watching much standard definition content, but the Sony ZH8 did a decent job here, making even grubby standard def content watchable from a normal viewing distance. Just don't expect miracles from standard definition sources, not when almost 99% of the pixels have to be made up to fill an 8K screen. The TV correctly detected and processed 3.2 and 2.2 cadences in interlaced film-based material once film mode was set to auto. But bear in mind that engaging film mode together with motion flow may also lead to the occasional stutter in 50Hz broadcast with mixed edits, which could be eradicated by turning off either motion flow or film mode. On this 1080p test pattern from the Spears & Munsell HD benchmark disc, chroma bandwidth was horizontally blurred except in game and graphics mode, with graphics mode being the cleaner of the two. Screen uniformity on our Sony ZH8 review unit was very good when checked with full-field grace lights, exhibiting no significant banding, color tinting or dirty screen effect, only very mildly darkened corners which didn't bother us in real-life viewing. For HDR, peak brightness measured 2100 nits on a 10% window after calibration to D65 white point, although the ZH8 needed a few seconds to ramp up to this level of brightness. Full field luminance measured 770 nits, one of the brightest we have on record. As a result, bright speckle highlight detail and high APL scenes in general just sparkle with a remarkable degree of intensity and impact that's simply breathtaking to behold. And it's not fake brightness that's generated through skewing of the PQ curve either. In the most accurate custom picture mode, even before calibration, our Sony ZH8 review sample tracked the ST2084 HDR10 standard as accurately as we could have hoped for on a consumer display. DCI-P3 color gamut coverage measured 94% UV, while Rec 2020 coverage was 73%, with the spectral power distribution confirming the use of PFS phosphor, as you can see from the narrow red peak. Like all Sony HDR televisions, the Bravia Z8 didn't adapt its tone curve to 1000 nit or 4000 nit HDR10 static metadata. Instead, the television uses the Japanese brand's own dynamic tone mapping to analyze the incoming histogram before deciding how to present the HDR picture. Sony's tone mapping algorithm favors preserving APL or average picture level over showing all specular highlights, so very bright highlight detail in 4000 nit HDR movies would be clipped, though to a lesser extent than step-down Sony TVs since there's more peak brightness headroom. Native gradation quality was excellent and could be improved even further by engaging smooth gradation, but since there's a risk of reducing fine detail, purists should probably disable it when watching high bitrate content. Like all Sony televisions with Dolby Vision support, the Bravia Z8H uses source-led or low-latency Dolby Vision, which isn't as good as TV-led Dolby Vision, but at least the TV's inherently high peak brightness went some way towards closing the gap. A selection of Dolby Vision programs played through the TV's internal Netflix app still exhibited some near-black polarization if you know where to look. For gaming, input lag measured 21 milliseconds in game mode with a 60Hz video signal, regardless of whether it's 1080p SDR or 4K HDR. The Bravia ZH8 or Z8H can support 4K at 120Hz gaming through HDMI port 4, but doesn't have the other HDMI 2.1 gaming features of VRR and ALLM, although Sony has designed a way for the TV to automatically switch into game mode appropriately when used with a PlayStation console. The key is auto picture mode. If this setting is engaged, which should be the case if you designated the HDMI input as game during setup, then the TV will automatically switch into game mode when playing PlayStation games, and back out of game mode once a movie starts playing on the PlayStation console. Last but not least, let's talk about 8K. Just like the flagship ZG9, the Sony ZH8 lacks the necessary codecs to play 8K videos over USB or from the internal streaming apps, so even 8K videos on YouTube can only be played back at 4K resolution. The TV did accept and display 8K videos fed through its HDMI 4 port, but failed to fully resolve 8K resolution according to this test pattern consisting of alternate black and white single pixel horizontal lines, kindly supplied by Stacy Spears of Spears and Mansell fame. It was impossible for our camera to capture such tiny difference in resolution, so we had to use a digital microscope to magnify the difference between the Sony ZH8 and the Samsung Q950TS, which passed 8K resolution successfully. The LCD panel itself was definitely 8K, as verified by the subpixel size, so there must be a bottleneck in Sony's video processing that's preventing 8K HDMI signal from being displayed at 8K resolution. Is it a deal breaker? In our very humble opinion, no. Here's the thing. The benefits of 8K resolution were minimal at best on a 75-inch screen from a normal viewing distance. Even though the Samsung Q950TS was able to resolve the single-pixel 8K pattern fully, it looked just like a full-field grace light from a sitting distance of 2 meters away, which is really close to the screen for most people. Unlike the stripes on my shirt, I love to use props whenever I can. The alternating black and white lines in 8K resolution was just impossible to make out from a normal viewing distance, and this was a best-case scenario where we are using a true 8K source, which is still very rare. What stuck out like a sore thumb though was the Samsung Q950TS subpar screen uniformity, and herein lies the truth. Resolution is significantly less important than other attributes of picture quality. Contrast, colors, motion, screen uniformity. These are qualities that are plainly visible from even 10 feet away. When we played 8K or 4K HDR content on the Sony ZH8, never once did we think that the picture looked soft. We were simply mesmerized by the emotional impact brought forth by 2100 nits of peak brightness and accurate tone mapping. At £6,000, it's certainly not cheap. And you have to understand that you're not buying 8K resolution, you're actually buying nits. It's a head scratcher, that's for sure. All things considered though, the Sony ZH8 or Z8H is the best LED LCD television we've reviewed in 2020, and so it deservedly earns our highly recommended award. If you have found this video useful, please click the like button and subscribe to the HDTV Test YouTube channel for more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.